Hello, welcome to another of From the Top, the show where we interview interesting people, famous, successful people, and find out how they really live their lives. And today I'm lucky enough to have the Honourable Gloria Epstein, Judge of the Court of Appeal. Gloria, actually, I'm going to ask you if I got that right. Did I give you the correct title?
Right on, John.
Because when I looked it up in Wikipedia to make sure we got it absolutely right, I got 4 different titles for you. One was Justice Gloria Epstein, one was Judge Gloria Epstein, one was Madam Justice Epstein, and then the Honourable Gloria Epstein. Why is there such a confusion in what would apparently be something they should all get right?
Well, probably because courts do have formalities attached to them, as you know, and but they're not always clear, and sometimes they actually change. So in this case, Court of Appeal judges used to be called, well, actually they used to be called not long ago, My Lady and My Lord.
Right.
And just before I was appointed to the Court of Appeal, it changed from My Lady and My Lord to Justice. And then they decided to take the Madam out of the name for women judges because they felt that we were past the point of needing to differentiate. Happily, I say they were past the point of feeling the need to differentiate between boy judges and girl judges. So now it's just the Honourable Justice Gloria Epstein or the Honourable Justice Tom Smith, and we are all treated the same, at least to that extent.
Now, we've known each other for a long time, and I'm going to later on bring out a nice story of an even better title you had. But let me just start off from your life, from the beginning. Silver spoon, you know, fantastically successful family. That's what one expects for someone who is a judge, as accomplished as you. Tell us how you started your life.
Well, certainly there were no silver spoons. We were lucky to have spoons. My mother is a maritimer, born in New Brunswick, to a family of 17.
17?
Yes, she was the middle child, and because she had certain illnesses, it was decided that she should be pulled out of school to be the nanny, because she was never going to make it very far anyway. So
what stage was that? What, she was 13 or 14?
No, she got to grade 3.
Wow, okay.
And she met my father, who was stationed in Moncton in the Air Force in World War II, and he had a grade 12 education, born in Southern Ontario. They moved after the war back to the Toronto area. He was going to become a dentist, but my older sister interfered with that. So the birth of my sister, I think, put my parents in a position where they had to earn some money.
Rather than get education.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were raised in quite a poor household, at least financially poor.
But obviously you must have had some sort of stimulus in the way your brain never stops working, you're always thinking of different things. Did you have a sort of stimulating background for that?
No. I wish I had, but right. Because I know a lot of friends, a lot of my colleagues on the court did come from very stimulating backgrounds. My dad worked very hard to keep things going in the family, and my mom was limited by her education, so she was very much a homemaker, and that's it. And the only thing that was happening in our household, other than survival, was obviously school and religion.
So how many siblings, brothers, sisters?
Older sister and a younger brother. Okay,
so not 17. She didn't follow her mother.
Mercifully, no.
A very strong religious background?
Yes.
But of course one thinks Epstein must be Jewish, but not.
Not. My great-grandfather and my great-great-grandfather were Baptist ministers. My father was raised in a little town in southern Ontario in a very strict Baptist home. And we were raised with a semblance of strictness. But when the doors were closed, my dad liked to have a drink or two.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, you know, it was a good mixture, I think. He enjoyed his life. He had lots of fun. But he kept to the values and the morals of the church. He was very involved in the church. And I guess we got to see a bit of both sides.
So did that affect you? Do you have any look back on that and think, yes, that gave me some good guidelines in life, that sort of thing?
I think so. I think it's hard to spend as much time at church as we did and not pick up the values and the morals that are part of any religious experience. And so, and because we were quite poor, it provided our entire social life. So it was, I think, a very positive factor in my life, gave our family focus. And also, as I said, my dad was prepared to stray. So
that obviously affected you. Obviously looked up to that a bit then.
Well, yeah. Girls got to have a little fun. My dad, it was a big influence on my life, and he worked very hard. When he worked hard. When he played hard. And I think I followed in his footsteps to that extent.
It's interesting you say that it had a positive effect, because one of the things you hear a lot these days of people who've drifted away completely from certainly the Christian church is because it was rammed down my throat, and so I got fed up with it.
My parents didn't ram it down my throat. It was simply a part of our life. And I think when I stopped actually going to church on a regular basis, they accepted my decision. My sister chose the other route. She was very much a churchgoer. And my brother and I stopped going to church, but I don't think it was an issue.
Right. Not with them.
It wasn't an issue with my parents or with us, and I guess for that I do respect them because they let us make our own choice. And then when I married and changed my name to Epstein, it was quite an interesting transition, I must say. Very interesting.
We'll get onto that as we get through. So, were you a brilliant sports person? Or you very? What was it that you did to get out of that social life?
I got sick.
Very useful. Okay, so that's a good lesson for. Could you explain a bit more?
No, I was a very ill child. I was always sick, but not just like the flu. I was in the hospital a lot, and with a number of problems, and so I missed a lot of school. And because my parents didn't have any money, it wasn't like I came out of the hospital and got better and we went skiing. There was just no opportunity to participate in sports. And at school I didn't, because I missed so much school. When I got out of the hospital, I'd have to study. So I didn't play any sports when I was a kid.
And social life as well?
That's right. I had no social life really, because I was always in the hospital and studying. Sounds dreadful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
God.
But I'm impressed that you decide, well, I better do some work. Most people might have felt sorry for themselves and perhaps not done that. But that was your spur, was it, to say, right, well, let's get on and pass some exams? I
needed something to latch onto, and so it was studying.
And you got into university through that? Is it?
Yes, I actually, of all the grandchildren, now you can imagine, with 17 kids in my mother's family, and my dad had 5. There's plenty of cousins. Too many, actually, I'd say.
Yes.
Yes. And,
what proportion of them do you know?
Very few. But I was the only one, or was the first one anyway, to go to university.
Of all that lot?
Can you believe it?
Some have followed you since, but
yes.
you were the first.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Even my older sister, she didn't go to university until I did. So it just, it wasn't an intellectually stimulating atmosphere. Nobody went to university. It just wasn't what we did. So when I went to Queen's, it was, I guess, I didn't think about it as a big deal, but I guess looking back, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm. Actually, funny enough, until after the Second World War, universities were quite rare.
Yeah.
None of my family went to university. The first was my son.
Really?
Went to university, yeah. We all went to the Navy or the Army or whatever.
We've got more in common than I thought.
Absolutely, yeah, but I'm not intelligent.
Stop
like
it.
You. So, sailed into Queen's, presumably, obviously, a scholarship.
Yeah.
Doing what? What were you reading?
I didn't really have a plan. And I think that's okay. Because I'd skipped 2 grades, and I was really young. I was way too young to have a plan. I may actually be too young, I'd still be too young to have a plan, but I was way too young to have a plan. And so I just picked the subjects I was good at. And curiously, I was good at both math and English. Very few people consider themselves good at both math and English.
Yeah, rather poles apart.
So,
I'm sure there's a logic somewhere, but
no, I said I had no plan. And so the problem was that all the exams conflicted with each other because nobody else majored in math and English. Because it was just, doesn't
so when
happen.
there was a maths exam, there was an English exam.
And I found out I wasn't that good in English anyway. I guess I just thought I was.
Right.
So after first year at Queen's in a math and English double major, Queen's started its first commerce course. God, it sounds like the Dark Ages.
Right.
And
is that a euphemism for business, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
It's still called commerce.
Right.
And so I switched into commerce because I wasn't that excited by the English courses I had been taking. I really liked the math, and the commerce made sense. So a plan was starting to emerge.
But at this stage, you said you skipped 2 grades. Mm-hmm. Who made that decision? Was that
It wasn't me.
somebody came along and said, "You're too clever for this school, Gloria, off you go to university"?
No, I skipped while I was in grade school.
Right, okay. But so you went to university, what, at 17, 18?
16.
16, wow. So now, now 17, 18, and you're now doing commerce. And a plan is now starting to evolve, is it?
Sort of, but all right.
Now, did you do anything else at university? Did you join lots of clubs, run the debating society, that sort of thing?
I think I did a few things. I think I was too busy growing up. You know, I had a lot of catching up to do.
Yes, you did.
And so I took karate.
Very useful, right?
Oh, yeah. I use a lot of my karate moves now. And I started a business. And
at university?
Yeah. And I know you're going to ask me about that, but let me finish. And I became part of student government. But I didn't take advantage of university the way I wish I had. I didn't get it. I didn't figure out until it was too late the opportunities that university experienced. I mean, I got the degree, but it was long after I left university, at least left Queen's, that I figured out what I missed in terms of getting involved in issues, starting to open my eyes to what was going on outside of my little life.
But and you were 2 years younger anyway, less mature. Isn't that, I think, the problem for a lot of people? We don't tend to realise what we should have done till it's sort of 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yep.
You know, I wish someone had told me when I started that I should have done this sort of thing.
Yep. And so now, I mean, I've got three children of my own. I try not to be in their face with advice, and usually give it when asked. But one thing I do offer to them is, when they have gone away to university, is go out there, get involved, protest.
Yeah, absolutely. Are they all now sitting in St. James's Park at the moment?
Last time I checked, no. No, they're all doing very well.
Right. So that worked.
So far.
Okay, so you started a business. Let's go back to that. So
this is
by
wild.
yourself? I mean, you just
no,
thought
I
it
had
was
two
a good
partners.
idea?
I was in a commerce course. I needed a business.
I see.
So
this is the holidays job, was it? Or that was the idea?
what it was just I don't know how it happened. I'm trying to block that part out of my mind, I suppose. Actually, it was my only successful business. Seriously.
Right.
I've had 3 businesses. It was the only successful one. I just thought of that.
Right.
Anyway, what we did was this. There was an element of illegality to it that we didn't realize until it was over, but that was all right.
Is it too long ago now that they won't prosecute you? You can talk about it if you like.
No, it was university rules,
Oh,
right?
I see. Okay, right.
It wasn't a criminal offense. What we did is we got our hands on the names, and I don't even know how, we got our hands on the names and addresses of all the first-year students. We were in 2nd or 3rd year, I can't even remember. I had 2 partners. And so we wrote to all of the parents. And personal, like
Right.
your daughter Susan, your son John, is about to write his or her final exams. And if you'd like to send a care package to kind of show them that you're thinking about them and wish them good luck and all of that, we'll look after it for you. And so we said, in the girls package we'll have stuff that girls like. And in the boy package we'll have stuff that boys like. And we gave them a list of what was going to be in the packages. The girls got their package was wrapped with a rose, and I don't know.
It's really nice.
The guys got a pencil or something, I don't know. And but it was a lot of stuff. So one of our partners was very good at negotiating and getting deals. So he went out to the wholesalers in Kingston and bought silly putty and gum and little notepads and roses and pencils and
By the 1,000.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I did all of the writing and the keeping the books and all of that.
Because you're good at maths.
That's right. I was, forgive me, the secretary. Yeah. And one of the guys went out and did all the negotiating, and the other was kind of like the business manager. And we ended up making $600.
Which 20 years ago was pretty good then, wasn't it?
Yeah, 20 years ago, and to students. And then the university sort of figured out what was going on. And it was brilliant.
Yes, they would have done that, wouldn't they?
All the stuff came in. We packaged it all up, and we put the parents sent us notes, so they were personalized. So the one for John Smith had a little note from John Smith's parents. We delivered it to his residence.
Yeah,
it was good.
Sounds like a tremendous business.
Yeah. The only thing we did wrong is we weren't supposed to have access to the list of students and their addresses,
Right.
but.
Well,
So?
the guy who started Facebook did almost the same, didn't he?
Right.
He didn't do too bad.
Yeah, we should have actually started Facebook. It would have been better.
But were the computers in those days?
I actually learned to program computers on
Fortran.
yes, and COBOL. IBM 360, the size of, some enormous room now.
Yeah.
You'd go in and you'd type those cards.
Yeah.
IX equals IY, IY equals 231. Do you remember that?
I do.
God.
And they huge machines which had hundreds of little flashing lights.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that was just to make us impressed, because there didn't seem any sort of logic to why these lights kept flashing all the time. And massive machines
Yeah.
producing chilled water to cool the machines down.
Yeah.
If the chilled water went off, there was emergency bells and everything, and everyone rushed in to stop the machines melting down. And that, whatever it was, a room at least 3 times the size of this studio.
Exactly.
And then now it's in a chip this size. It's ridiculous, isn't it? So that was that business lasted a year before you were found out,
Yeah.
did it? So
But it was like a one-off. It
showed you could do it.
well, there was only one final set of final exams, so that was it.
Oh,
and
so
then,
you didn't do it when you were coming out to final exams. You did it in the final year.
Right.
Right.
And so then we were told not to use the student list anymore, and so our company was short-lived but successful. It was, what it was
Right.
called?
No.
Somebody Cares.
Very good.
Yeah.
You still got the name? You registered?
I don't know
it?
if we ever had the name.
Yes. You didn't go through the IP channels.
We hadn't studied that yet.
So then you left university knowing exactly what you wanted to do, presumably. Run a business, be successful.
Right. Yeah. But I already had run a business and I was already successful, so I was well on my way to a plan.
Which was?
I was going to move to Australia. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I was going to move to Australia and start up a business with catering trucks at construction sites, because I'd done some research, and they didn't have, you know, those little trucks with the donuts and the coffee.
Yeah.
They didn't have them in Australia.
What did they do instead then?
Well,
Just
they were
beer,
going.
was it?
They were going to have it once. One of my partners, one of my two partners from Somebody Cares, he decided to come with me. So we bought 2 one-way tickets on a boat, ship.
It's all right.
To Australia, and that's what we were going to do.
At what stage did you get off? Lima?
No, we never got on the boat, ship.
Right.
He had bought some property on an island on Lake Temagami during one of his summer camp or summer fishing lodge working experiences. Yep. And he had to build a cabin on it of a certain value and certain square footage, or he would have lost title because it was Crown land and the government was trying to discourage speculators. So we had to build the cabin before we left, or he would have lost his property.
So just the two of you built a cabin?
Yeah. So, but once that happened, we went up to Temagami just after graduation. He had a commerce degree, I had a commerce degree, and we moved up to Temagami in May of 1972, and we intended to stay there for a few months to build the cabin, and our ship was to leave August the 27th from Vancouver.
Right.
And so we built the cabin. Now,
that's pretty quick.
Considering we had no electricity, no water, no nothing. We were just on an island, and we...
So it was a big square with a roof, was it?
Yeah, well, it was nicer than that.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, and it was a great time because it wasn't like we could go to the store. We were 7 miles from the nearest road, and so we had to take our little boat to the road once a week to pick up like potatoes and carrots and things that would last.
And presumably nails and wood and
but we didn't have a fridge or an oven or so it wasn't like we could go and pick up a quart of milk. And then what we ate was we fished or hunted every day after work, and that's what we ate. It was wild.
So what were you eating? Beaver and rats?
Rats. We were eating quail and fish.
Gosh, well that sounds pretty good. You'd pay a fortune for that if you were downtown.
I make a mean quail.
Well, I should hope so.
Yeah.
Good. So, but the objective was to get this hut that could be classified as a hut, so that you could then leave.
It was a cabin.
Oh, cabin. I'm so sorry, cabin on the ship. So, did it have to be anything special, or do you just decide you want to make it a smart, special cabin?
Well, we were living in it, so it was, we had little curtains and we made it home. But then we enjoyed Temagami so much. I mean, we really loved it there. We loved the fishing and the hunting and the outdoors and everything. So we cashed in our ship tickets.
Are you allowed to do that? Right.
Yeah, and stayed in Temagami.
Mm-hmm. And why aren't you still there now? What happened?
Well, we were short one business, right? Because we were supposed to be in Australia with our business. So we were now in Temagami, but we still had to go the business route because that was the plan. So we bought a fishing camp called the Manitou Hotel.
Is that on the same island?
No. It was on an island about 6 miles away from our island.
Okay.
And so we closed January 1, 1973.
Having you were running a fishing camp?
Yeah.
How many people did you have staying with you then?
Well, we had 7 motel units on the main building. It was a 5-acre island, and 7 units in the main building with a large cocktail lounge. The only cocktail lounge on Lake Temagami, and Lake Temagami is a large lake. It has 3,000 miles of shoreline and 1,800 islands. It's a big lake, and we were the only licensed establishment. So we were fairly popular. So it had a large cocktail lounge and dance floor and everything. It had a licensed restaurant and 7 motel units and 3 separate housekeeping cabins with 2 or 3 bedrooms in each. And then we rented snowmobiles and we rented boats, and it was a big operation. Well, it wasn't a huge operation, but for us it was a big deal.
How many people? You must have had lots of people you employed then, did you?
Well, my partner and I, we were 2, and we had a cook from Bear Island, the Ojibwe Indian band, wonderful cook,
yeah,
June Twain, and we had a housekeeper and a bartender. That's it.
Wow, you must have been up all the time.
Yes, it was hard work. My partner left because he found after a number of months that he didn't like it. He didn't like the pressure of the people, and we're not catching any fish, and the weather's too hot or the weather's too cold or whatever. So he left to go to British Columbia and live there. He asked me to come with him, but I, didn't want to live a life of solitude in British Columbia, which was his plan, and B, we had a huge mortgage on the property that I thought needed some attention.
Ah, right.
So he left in September, so after the first summer, and I stayed and ran it. But it was hard work, very hard work.
Fulfilling? I mean, did you enjoy a lot of it, or was it really just a grind?
Fulfilling now, at the time a grind.
You didn't realize how lucky you are, sort of thing.
Well, I mean, sometimes you don't realize the lessons that you are learning while you're learning them, and then afterwards you look back and say, that was a valuable experience. As painful as it was at the time, it turned out to be, I think, part of my makeup that has helped me along the way. Part of it was just really hard work. I got up around 4:30 every morning to make lunches and the breakfast and everything for the fishermen. And then I didn't go to bed until about 2 in the morning because I had to be at the bar at night and, be the hostess and so forth, look after problems, and then clean up after everybody left. So I was exhausted all of the time.
Yes, 2 hours a night isn't quite.
No, Sunday I got 5 because the bar wasn't open. It was hard.
Lessons learned, obviously hard work. Dealing with people, I suppose, of different types must have been another thing that you either relished or hated. Was that something that you learned something from that?
Yes, it was. Especially if somebody's on vacation. Everybody I dealt with was on vacation, so they're quite demanding. Now, these are fishermen mostly, and nice guys, a lot of them, but still they want things to work out. They're on vacation. They've spent a lot of money to be there. And the ice fishing in the winter was particularly interesting because I had to get the snowmobiles going in the morning, take them out to the huts, bring them back later in the day after they'd consumed usually a fair amount of beer. And it was wow, an interesting 2 years. So financially it was tough.
Right.
And I was 21, and the hours were insane.
Not much of a social life either, then.
Not much of a life. And I bartended on the bartender's day off, and I cooked on the cook's day off, and I did all the rooms on the day off with the laundress or the cleaning person, and did all the laundry every day, wringer, washer, and lines. It was really hard. Really hard. And so I decided to go to law school.
Yes, there's an obvious connection there. I can see that. What about the mortgage? You got rid of that, did you?
Well, that's how my father died when I was in university, when I was at Queen's, quite suddenly in an airport. So that was a big tragedy in my life. And so I turned to my brother-in-law, because my sister had been married, and he was a lawyer. So I contacted him, and they lived in Oshawa. And I said, how do you get rid of something like a fishing camp? So he sent me something called a quit claim deed, and I signed it. I called the vendors, and I said, come on over, I've got a fishing camp for you. So
and they did?
They did. And I got on a bus and came to Toronto.
And you were telling, how much did you have in your pocket when you arrived in Toronto?
$11.
That was it. That was your entire life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even buy you a hotel room that night.
No, I had to get a job that day because I needed cash. So I got a job. I got to Toronto around noon from North Bay, and I got a job as a cocktail waitress at the Sheraton Centre, a place called the Pinnacle.
Right.
And I started working at 5 o'clock, and by midnight or 1 o'clock, I had $80.
So that's that room, that night, and on you went from there.
Yep.
Amazing. So all the references and so on, they were lucky they just said, yep, fine, you look great, you're starting at 5.
I guess.
Well done.
I just had to keep walking into. I hadn't sent letters out or CV or I just walked into a place. It was April. I guess the Sheraton was hiring. I got a job and started that day. And I worked there at the Pinnacle for 3 years while I put myself through law school.
I think the other thing that I also find, and that's one of the things I'm enjoying about this program, is talking to people about their lives. You know, very few children ever ask their parents what they did. It's extraordinary. And when they're just about to die, they think, God, what was it like in the war when he was in a submarine or whatever? And you just don't ask them. I don't know why that is, but it just seems to be quite common, isn't it? That we forget to find out about those people who influenced us.
I had a wonderful grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and she's the person in my life who I wish the most that I had, I'm not going to say this properly, that I had an opportunity to explore her life with her. And like you say, it gets too late and there's profound regret.
Mm. I mean, you don't have to go back too many generations to, we were joking about Fortran and quill pens, but you don't have to go too many generations back before that people really didn't have the sort of things we all take for granted. I had a grandmother who was in Western Australia. She used to ride a horse side saddle in her ball gown 50 miles for a party, and then ride back again.
I wish I'd known your grandmother.
Amazing. But that was normal.
Yeah.
You know. And now people wonder about, it's 10 minutes, do you think I'll go, in a taxi?
My grandmother was the first female chiropractor in Canada. 1907, she got on a horse or on a buggy or whatever you got on in 1907 and went down by herself to Ohio and studied for 2 years and came back up and became a chiropractor. This is like in 1909.
I didn't think they were around then.
I've got this wonderful, she lived to be within a month of her 100th birthday. And I've got these newspaper articles about her. It's very cool.
Yeah. Fascinating. I think we don't look enough back. I
Yeah.
think I always feel sorry for families who don't even know who their grandparents are.
Yeah.
There's so much, a wealth of things to learn from. So here we are. Were you good at being a waitress? How long you must have done that for 3 or 4 years, did you?
Really good. I always know.
Being modest, of course.
No. I'm prepared to say when I was really good because I'm not that good at a lot of things, but waitressing, I can always fall back on.
Oh well, that's nice to know.
I was in a restaurant with my mom a couple of years ago. My mom has Alzheimer's now, and so she's not functioning. But I used to take her every Sunday night to a restaurant, one of her favorite restaurants. And so my husband and my mom and I are sitting there on a Sunday night, and I could tell that this waitress serving us was having a tough time. So I said, "Is this your first night?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Can I show you how to carry plates?"
Go on,
so I lined them all up, and because before I was a cocktail waitress, I worked in a pancake house for about, 5 years when I was in high school.
Right.
And so I showed her. She said, "Wow, are you a waitress?" And I said, "I was, and still may be." She had no idea that I wasn't a waitress, but it was great.
So you're on a pinnacle for her then, to coin a phrase. So law school, I mean, you're now, 21, 22, which most people are still at university for. What happened after law school? Did you go straight into a job?
Yeah, but I sort of decided, sometimes there was a plan, and then sometimes I got sidetracked a bit. I got sidetracked by babies, and of course...
Oh, we forgot about that, yes. Let's go back to them.
When I was working at the Pinnacle in my second year, after first year law, so approaching second year, I worked full time to pay for my tuition and all the rest of it. And I had a policy of never dating customers. But this customer was different because he came in with one of the lawyers who had lectured at the law school. Wonderful then lawyer, later became a judge, now deceased, by the name of David Humphrey. Wonderful criminal lawyer, a criminal judge too. And he had come and lectured. And he was with my ex-husband, Jeff Adair. Excuse me. And so I went up to the table and I said, "Oh, Mr. Humphrey, just finished first year law. I really enjoyed your presentation," and so forth. So he introduced me to Jeff, he and Jeff were working on a criminal trial just across the street at the courthouse.
Right.
And so Jeff asked me to go out. I went out, and we were married the next year, and I had my first son in third year law.
Right, so that's a slight complication to life, but still that doesn't waive you from getting on and
well, except we're not talking about 2005. We're talking about 1975.
Right.
And so being a woman was hard enough going into the legal profession, or any profession. Being a pregnant woman was a really difficult position to be in terms of career opportunities.
And presumably a woman with a child at home would
and
be
then
also difficult.
and then I during bar admission course ended up having my second son during bar admission course. So I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and I was about to start my career as a litigator, and those were challenging times. It sort of reminded me of the times back in the fishing lodge when I got 2.5 hours sleep.
Yeah.
Didn't I tell you? It prepared me.
Yeah, well, we're coming to that in a second. So, what proportion of lawyers were women in those days, roughly?
Maybe 10 or fewer, 10 or less.
10%?
Yeah.
Wow. Because it's a lot different today.
I remember going into a job interview for an articling position, and it was a large law firm, and the lawyer came in and took one look at me because I was pregnant, and he just looked at me, he said, "You can't be serious." Obviously I was.
And did you get the job?
I
didn't get his job?
No.
Right.
You know who gave me my first job is John Sapinka, former Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, gave me my first job.
And what did he see in you think that the others didn't?
I don't know, but I'm glad, whatever it was, I'm glad he saw it.
And you were pregnant then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you started the first job just about to have your second child?
Yeah. Around that time I had the two boys, and my husband had 2 young boys from his previous marriage. So we were raising 4 boys up to the age of around 6. And
you're about 24, 25 now, and you're just about to start a career. Wow.
It's hard.
So how did you juggle family and work?
Not well.
Okay.
I did crazy things, like I'd get up in the middle of the night and drive, we lived in the West End, and drive downtown and work for a few hours and drive back and get back into bed. My husband never knew I was gone.
How often a week did you do that?
Once or twice a week.
So you back to the office, midnight to 4,
Yeah.
and then you get up at 6 or something,
And
pretending you've been sleeping all night.
It was hard. And as I look back, my marriage failed, and for lots of reasons. I've learned enough about life to know that most marriages that fail because of the contribution of both parties. Sometimes it's just one, but not that often. And so I said then, and I'll say now, it failed because of a contribution both of us made to a highly stressful situation, and in different ways we dealt with it badly. And so that's what happened.
So would you say, in your case, you think you didn't spend enough time with the family? I mean, you weren't midnight and 4 o'clock, you wouldn't be doing anything anyway.
It was more decisions I made that demonstrated, that could be interpreted as putting more priority on my career than the family. Could be interpreted that way. I get it. If I had to do it over again, I would do it differently.
More time with the family?
More time with the family, but also being prepared to make career sacrifices to show that at the end of the day, the family was first. I believed the family was first. I believed I was treating the family as having top priority in my life. But I could see how others may see it differently. And that period was so full of activity and stress, and I can't really say, I can't objectively look at it except to know that I made some choices I wouldn't make today.
But it's so easy now to sit back and analyze hindsight. But I can understand, when you've got, and I know you're the sort of person who gets intensely involved in that particular thing that's happening. And when it is just an event, a really important event that's got a beginning and an end, you've got to make decisions, you've got to do things, and you can see the end, it's perhaps a week away, days away. That seems to be okay to just quickly do that and do it properly, because the family goes on forever.
Yeah.
Whereas, no, each time you do that, you're chipping away at the family.
That's probably a good way to put it.
Yeah. Because if it's a short thing, let's do it properly. Don't stop that halfway through and go back to the family. Just finish that, and then you can. The family are all sort of the backstop. So that lasted, what, 4 or 5 years? Your marriage?
7.
7 years. So the kids were sort of 6 and
4. Yeah.
And then, right, okay. So then what did you do? You then decided, let's go and be a judge.
I was practicing law and with a big firm, and after time went by, I met this wonderful man who I refer to as my current husband. Have referred to him as my current husband for almost 30 years now. So,
Seymour.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we were married.
At this stage, you're a successful lawyer with a
big firm. Yeah. And Seymour, my current husband, is a businessman, as you know. And he persuaded me to give one more try at a business. So I'd had somebody cares.
So you've had 2 successful. You call the fishing lodge not successful?
I call it not successful.
Well, you ended up with
$11. Yes.
Well, it could have been a deficit. But I'll give you that. Okay, you can call that a failure then. All right.
So I started my own law firm about the same time as I had my 3rd child, daughter. And she was Canada's first, I'm always going into first females, aren't I? First female test tube baby.
Really?
Yeah. So she's...
Goodness.
Yeah.
Right.
So because...
So that's
in vitro fertilization, yeah. Because I had... we decided not to have any more children after the 2nd son. And so I put myself in a position where I could no longer get pregnant. And so when I married Seymour, we wanted to have a child, and the in vitro fertilization program in Canada was just starting at Toronto General Hospital. So I went into it, and I was successful, and now have a wonderful 26-year-old daughter.
Yes, you do. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Gosh, how amazing.
But at the same time as I had Lauren, I started my third and second unsuccessful business, my own law firm.
So just before, I forgot to mention, because you were talking about the thing that amazes me about you is how little sleep you seem to need, getting up at midnight at 4 o'clock. You also tell me, I seem to remember some time ago, that you turned all the clocks forward. So, yeah, every clock in the house watches turn forward so that your husband would get up at what he thought was 6 o'clock. In fact, it was 4. Is that right?
Yep.
So you could get 2 extra hours in the office.
And you could see how irritated he would become.
I think he'd get quite cross about that, yes.
So as I say, I contributed to the problem. And turning the clocks ahead.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, right, so I just like...
You know what would happen? We'd get in the car, because we drove down to work together. We'd get in the car, and the person on the radio would announce the time.
And he'd slam the brakes on.
And he'd go, what? It's 5 in the morning?
Thinking it was 7:30 or something. Right, your own business, your law firm.
Yeah.
Any reason, I mean, why not just stay with a big firm and get the big jobs?
I thought that maybe if I had my own business, I would have more flexibility. And this time I really wanted to be in a position to make my own decisions about how much time to spend with my family. You know, I still had obviously heavy involvement with my sons. I had a new baby, and I didn't want to be, I didn't want to feel obligated to put in the huge hours that I felt when I was in a large law firm. So that's why I left and started my own business.
And did you not have many huge hours to put in your own business? It tends to work the other way, doesn't it?
Yes.
So how long was that? How long did that last?
1985, I started my own law firm, and I was appointed a judge in 1993.
Between 85 and 93, what
I ran my own business.
Make you decide to go into the judicial system?
By this time, it took me a long time to mature.
You're still only about 28, but yes.
By this time, I started to understand myself better and what my strengths and weaknesses were. And you could look back, at that point I was able to look back and say, what was it that I did along this bumpy and very curved road that where I thought I was really doing something that I enjoyed and actually did well. And it turned out that it was anything to do with people.
Right. Like being a waitress.
Like being a waitress. I've said this before. Yeah. I'll say it again. I was a really good waitress. And
because you understood the people?
Yeah.
You made an effort of...
Yeah, you go up to one table and there'd be 2 little old ladies who'd taken a bus up from Buffalo to see Toronto, and you'd tell them about the city and where places to visit. There'd be honeymooners and they just want an arm. Or there'd be stockbrokers up from, and they wanted you to flirt with them a little bit. So I was pretty good at that.
Right.
So, and there were other things that when I was practicing law and other stages of my life in terms of emerging within my family and community, that I thought, I've got people skills. I have work ethic, I have people skills, notwithstanding the fact that I bailed out of honors English in first year at Queen's. I'm a decent writer. And so I put those 3 together and I said, time for a plan, like a real plan that made sense. So you put those 3 together, interested in people, prepared to work hard, decent writer, and there's a 4th thing. I looked at what really mattered to me. Like, what did I actually really care about besides my family? And
right.
I really care about fairness and justice. I mean, it sounds, I don't want to sound artificial, but I really genuinely do. And so becoming a judge started to make sense. But I think it was the first step in my life that I'd actually taken on after reflection.
The first time you actually planned,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to do, yeah.
This
And you were
was-
how old, about 30 now?
I was, oh, you're adorable. I was, 41.
Oh, okay, all right, so, right.
You're not so good at math, eh?
No, I was brilliant at maths, actually, but I was thinking of something else. Go on.
And so I applied, and I thought it would take me several years because you don't just get hired as a judge.
Hey, I'm going to be a judge now.
Pick me.
Yeah.
No, and it happened a lot faster than I thought. And I was appointed to the what's now the Supreme Court of, the Superior Court of Ontario, and realized very quickly it was the ideal job for me. I just have loved every single day since 1993 when I became a judge, every day.
Particularly the fact that you're dealing with people that either need help or you can do what's right. I mean, it must be very satisfying often. But do you often get cases where you're not satisfied and there's nothing you can do about it because of the system?
Actually, yeah, I mean, there's interference along the way, I suppose, but I'm very proud of our system. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than, I think it's better than any system in the world, and I say that with some experience. Teaching, I ran for 10 years I ran a school to teach new judges how to be new judges. And we export.
You initiated that yourself? Or?
We used to have a program that was modest, and then I was hired kind of as a consultant with a number of other judges from across Canada to develop a new system for Canada for federally appointed judges, which I did, and then I ran the school. This is while I was a judge, so it wasn't like I stopped judging for 10 years and ran the school. It was what I did in my spare time. But
Can't say much spare time, yes.
but so I think and we now export our knowledge and experience in training judges to other countries who are starting to develop a more sophisticated judiciary.
Well, if you take, I mean, the interesting made me think, take the States, where it seems to be that anybody can be a judge, just you have to be a good friend of the sheriff or the mayor or whatever. Do they have a system at all like we do, where you have to go up through a legal funnel, if you like?
I think their system is different, depending on whether you're a state judge or a federal judge, as ours is.
Right. And
I don't know all that much about how you apply and qualify and get selected. We try our best in Canada, to consider the applications, because a person has to initiate his or her own application. Goes through quite a strenuous process of local examination of what's the person's reputation in the community. This is interesting, have they been involved in the community? Have they made contributions outside of law? And so forth.
Do they have to be lawyers?
Oh, yes.
They have to be lawyers.
And then it goes, if you pass through that committee, you go up to Ottawa for another look, and then how you get appointed depends on a lot of things. Sometimes what you bring to the table that the bench doesn't have, for example, ethnicity, language. In some, yeah. In some countries like China, you go to judge school. You finish university, and you say, I'm going to be a judge, and you go to judge school, and there you are, 25 years old, and you graduate, and you're a judge. Which I think is...
Not a lot of experience in life.
No.
No.
But it's just a different system. It's interesting.
Yeah. Are there more applicants, lots of people wanting to be judges than there are places, or is it
way more applicants?
There are.
Places,
so that's healthy. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a wonderful job. Not for everybody. Some people actually get to be a judge and they realize that they're in the wrong place. Just like my partner in the fishing lodge. We were, in the fishing lodge in a few months, and he said, I'm in the wrong place. And I think that's healthy. Some people make a commitment, get to a place, and they don't realize that they can and should get out.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be the wrong person running a fishing lodge. It's a whole different ballgame to be a wrong person making decisions for other people.
And you know better than I, but so many cases, rather like you said, it takes two in a marriage. In so many cases, the accused and the defendant are almost, they've both got a lot on their side. It's not just cut and dried. He's a bad guy and he's a good guy. That must be challenging, and I suppose not always the one you want to do.
One of the great things I think about I did a lot of criminal work
Yeah.
as a judge, and am the beneficiary of that. One of the many things about being a judge that's so wonderful is an opportunity to learn from people who you otherwise probably wouldn't meet. Street people, drug dealers, prostitutes, and these are people who are part of our community. And usually once you go through the process of a criminal trial, you start to understand how they got to be where they are. Not always, but rarely does somebody wake up when they're 14 years old and say, I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a drug dealer. People don't make that decision. Very few do. It's a whole bunch of things come together. Poverty, dysfunctional households, problems in school, bad crowd, you name it, that contribute to a criminal path in life. And I saw a great deal of that, and I frequently saw two victims in a courtroom: the victim of the crime and the accused himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great opportunity to learn, to empathize, to appreciate my life and the wonderful opportunities I have and been able to give my kids. But I guess also to be frustrated by the fact that we have these groups of people who could be like you and me, could have law-abiding lives and support a family and enjoy life, and who just because of a twist of fate don't ever get there.
That's an interesting side of the justice system, because it's interesting. I remember once a priest was telling me once that there's a huge difference between religious teaching, turn the other cheek, for instance, and justice, which seeks to get retribution or revenge or whatever you want to call it. Almost opposite poles. Did you ever get a situation where you felt that you were compelled because of the system to take that decision, but you knew that what you were doing was going to be bad for him, it wasn't going to be good for society, and there was nothing you could do about it? Did you ever get that?
Yes. The whole business, we're talking criminal justice now, and
yes.
There's a lot more to law and judging than that. There's shareholder fights, and there's family matters, and there's people who've lost their jobs, medical malpractice, you name it. There's a lot of different law that forms part of the job of most judges. But the criminal courts is the area where most people, that attracts the interest of most people, because it's in the papers all the time, and it's on television, and it's I guess attracts.
Well, actually, I find in my life you only have to walk into any criminal court anywhere, and 9 times out of 10, whatever's going on there is absolutely fascinating. It could be front page news any day. It's amazing what turns up.
I worked in criminal courts where we usually had a jury, because I did a lot of murder trials, which are pretty much always determined by a jury, but also a lot of the other work in the Superior Court is jury work. I was always fascinated with the wisdom of a jury. 12 people coming together, different walks of life, retired bus drivers and school teachers and you name it, students. They'd come together, and I'd sit and I'd work with them for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and I'd look over at them, and they were hearing about a side of life they'd never, ever, ever been exposed to before. After almost 20 years as a judge, I can't say I've seen and heard it all, because I've seen and heard it all until the next day when I see and hear something different, right? And it's always the case, which is one of the most fascinating parts of being a judge, is just there's a new story every single day. It's amazing. But how these people, total strangers, taken out of their lives, come into a courtroom and figure it out. Now, a couple of times I had to sentence people who I thought I disagreed with the verdict. That doesn't happen very much, and that's hard. And sometimes I had to sentence a young person, I don't mean legally a young person, but a younger offender, to a certain number of years in prison with the firm belief that this was not the right way to handle his problems. And so a couple of times I tried to get a bit creative in coming up with a sentence that had an aspect to it that would involve some remedial work. Unfortunately, our prison system is such that the finances aren't there really to provide rehabilitation opportunities for people who have been detained. And so often they come out worse.
And that's one of the things that gets a lot of press today is what is the payoff between rehabilitation and not doing it? I mean, is it not going to work? Most of them died in the war, baddies, and they're still going to be baddies. Do you believe rehabilitation actually is something that we really should be doing much better, and it's going to be of benefit to most of the people who go in?
We have to do better than we're doing, for sure. Do I have the answers? Probably not. But see, there are three different principles that inform sentencing. One is specific deterrence. So we impose a sentence that will say to this individual person, don't do it again, because this isn't fun for you, because jail is not fun. Secondly, general deterrence. So other like-minded people may think twice before doing something because they know that they're probably going to get a long sentence if they're caught. Of course, they never think they're going to get caught, so that's a bit of a problem with general deterrence. And another is sort of expressing society's not condemnation, but views of that kind of conduct. I should obviously add there is potential for rehabilitation is one of our considerations. And some people have just got such a career in crime that rehabilitation is starting to look like it's not going to work no matter what. But some people, I remember one young man who had so much potential, and just something went wrong in his life at home, and I could just see this guy going on and soaring. So I hope he's doing well. He's another guy I should look up, along with John Grant.
Right. Now, I mentioned when we talked at the very beginning about your title, and I mentioned there was a lovely story you told me about this man in one of your criminal courts who didn't know quite what to call you. Can you tell us that story?
One of my favorite stories. And once again, I cannot tell you how much I learned from the people in the criminal courts. I'm a very fortunate woman for a lot of reasons. Anyway, the guy's name was Mr. Robertson, and he'd been in jail for a very long time on a series of crimes, and 25 years actually, as you added them all up, which in Canada is a very long time. Yeah. And he was about to be released, and they kept him another 6 weeks to do some psychiatric testing to make sure he wasn't a danger to the community or himself. And we have authority to do that, not we, but doctors have the authority to do that under the Mental Health Act. And he was quite annoyed by an additional 6 weeks detention after all those years in prison, and I understood that.
Yes.
He didn't have very much left, and so 6 weeks was a lot of time. So he did his 6 weeks, and they studied him, and they found that he was not a danger to himself or the community, and he was let out, but he sued the doctor and the provincial government for essentially what was unlawful detention. And it was a civil case arising out of a criminal backdrop, a civil case. Anyway, and he was self-represented. And he looked a lot like Johnny Cash.
Right.
And, anyway. So on one side of the...
Big cowboy hat. That's
no, he had no hat, but he had also, like, long hair tied back in a ponytail and jeans on. And, he wasn't sort of suited up for the occasion, but that's all right. He has just as much right to be in a courtroom as anybody else. So one side of the courtroom, I've got the plaintiff, and the other side of the courtroom, I've got lawyers for the defendants, all with their gowns on and their Montblanc pens and their computers and everything, because the doctors and the provincial government were all represented by big law firms. And so he stood up the first day, and he's got this big bag with cigarette butts and coffee grinds, and he pulls out all his documents and he says, "Your integrity." Called me "Your integrity." And he says, this here is a case about them keeping me in jail longer than they should have, and I'm getting damages out of here. I said, okay, I'll listen to what you have to say. Case went on a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And every time he stood up, he says, "I object, Your integrity, I object." But the best part was, every day he brought this paper bag in with his stuff, right? And I got to tell you, I learned so much from this man about life in jail.
Right.
I put people in jail, but what do I know about it? And I always not worried, but it troubled me that I was sending people to a place I didn't even know about. I couldn't even envision. Well, this man helped me with that. And he had prepared his case, and I respected the effort that he put into it and the arguments he made. I mean, he didn't win his case, but he got a good hearing. Anyway, he said, at the beginning, he said, "Now, Your integrity, something's going to happen in this trial you will never forget." Perfect. Anyway.
Good start.
And so, the very last day when he's going to argue his case, the witnesses were all finished. Instead of the bag with the coffee grinds and the cigarette butts, he brings in a black valise.
Right.
Big one. Puts it on the desk. He stands up. He said, "Your integrity, I'm about to argue my case." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Remember I said something would happen to you that you'd never forget?" "Yep. Now's the time." The three lawyers on the other side
About to dive
under the, like, they're just gone under the table, right? I've got a, anyway,
You've got a big oak table in front of you.
Yeah, and there are security people in the,
right.
And I didn't feel at all threatened. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. Click, opens the big valise, and he takes out an enormous flag of Scotland. And he wraps it around him so that, like, around and around, and this big bow on top, so all you can see is his face.
Yes.
And he delivered about a 4-hour closing argument wrapped in the flag of Scotland. The reason being is he was trying to persuade me that I should change the law to the law in Scotland that didn't have the provision that would detain people further for mental investigation or psychiatric investigation.
Saves in the wrong court then. Yes.
But so he
brilliant.
called me Your integrity all the way through, and it was just obviously a trial I'll never forget, because I just thought, once again, I was very fortunate to have met this man.
It sounds such a wonderful job, but you've got to work hard, because behind the scenes you're writing out reports, your findings, and so on. Family life again? You're getting more family life now as a judge, or were you?
Well, I have grandchildren now.
Yes.
And so it's hard. I work very, very long hours, not quite as long as at the fishing camp, but close. Work very hard, very long hours. And I'm at a stage in my life where it's not as easy as it was. I'm not saying physically, because I don't feel any older, but it's just people my age are on to different things, a little more travel, spending time with their grandchildren and so forth. So I do a lot of what I did before. I don't sleep very much, and I try to spend time I can with my family, but I have one difference. It's a big one. I never put my career in front of them.
But they can't ring you up in the middle of a trial and say, you've got to come home now.
Well, I don't have trials because I'm in Court of Appeal.
Okay.
I just have hearings that last most a day. But if there was something urgent and I had to come home, I'd be out of there. I'm not saying I wouldn't do that or didn't do that when I was younger, but it would cause me a lot more stress, and I'd be trying to cover things up, and partly because life was so different then for women. We were regarded with suspicion. You know, are you really career oriented? You're having a family. What's going on here? Like, how soon before you leave?
And go and look after the family. Yeah.
So those were tough times. But
do you
now,
think they've changed now?
Yeah, it's still not. There's still, as you know, because there's usually studies and talks and books and lectures and initiatives taken to give women an easier opportunity to make decisions involving their family, much easier. But now, if my daughter or one of my sons or something for the grandchildren is coming up, I just happily go out and say, you know what, I can't do this. I'm involved with my daughter, or I'm going to something involving one of my grandchildren. I wasn't able to do that before, part of it because of the culture, part of it because of insecurity on my part. And that's for sure. I was profoundly insecure about...
Now that's a side you mentioned, and we haven't brought that up yet. How can someone, I know you quite well now, insecure is not a word that you stick against Gloria Epstein, and yet you say that's what drove you.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Start when you were young. Is that why you worked so hard? I mean, what was insecure? You were a beautiful young girl. You were bright. 2 businesses. I mean, how can you be insecure?
2 businesses that failed. Don't forget that.
One.
Anyway, my mother, because of her upbringing, wasn't exactly supportive. So...
Didn't understand? Is that more...
I think maybe a bit jealous.
Right.
So she was pretty tough. Very tough. I would say physically and emotionally abusive is a fair way of saying it. And so I think that it was hard for me to grow up when your own mother is... thinks of you the way she said she thought of me, which was pretty negative. It's hard to think well of yourself if your own mother doesn't. So I think, I'm not being... It sounds like I'm being critical of my mom, but she didn't grow up in a household that was fostering, so I understand it.
Oh, that's crazy.
But that's what has...
So that made you want to prove that you were better, as it were. Is that the insecurity you felt?
Yep.
And there you were being successful, but never feeling that you were being successful.
Right. You
Amazing,
got it.
Isn't it? Yeah. Because it's so easy in hindsight. You've made a great success of your life, and you're now comfortable, secure. You're able to rush off from the office if a family thing occurs. But someone will turn around and say, yeah, but you're only able to do that because you sacrificed your 30s and 40s working hard and perhaps not putting the family first. So had you put the family first when you were in your 30s, perhaps you wouldn't have been so successful.
Yeah, that's fair.
What's your thoughts on that?
It's probably true. It's a decision. I think you can still do what I did, but I could have done it better. I could have communicated in better ways the importance of my family and still done what I did. I think it's interesting because it's coming out in this conversation. I hadn't really put it all together, but I think it was a combination of actually being insecure as a result of my upbringing. That's number one. Number two, being in the 70s and a woman and in-law and babies. and really not having the maturity to kind of see it for what it was that caused the problem. Going back there now, I think I'm more confident. Culture's changed, and I would be able to work as hard and achieve what I achieved, but with sending a different message, or sending the message
working hard with confidence as opposed to working
yeah,
hard.
and also saying, you know what, I'm out of here. My son's got a t-ball game.
Yeah. And actually, it won't matter if I do it starting tomorrow morning again. It actually isn't the end of the world. So you've got so much free time, and have had in the last 20 years in your life, that you felt you had to do something else. So I don't suppose that many people know, but you're also a brilliant horsewoman. I mean, how many times have you won the Winter Fair?
Well, I do like show jumping horses, and I've had my share of red ribbons. And
last year, I think, was the last one, wasn't it?
A couple of years ago, I was on a horse called After Midnight. And
very apt for you, I would say.
And we were, yes, that's when I actually practiced. And so we were Canadian champion 2 years in a row. And now I'm just working up with a new horse called Moon Shadow. And so it's a nice release for me to do something that's so totally different.
But that, to be of the level that you're at, I mean, how many hours a week or month or whatever do you have to practice that?
I should practice more, but I don't have those hours, so I frequently just go to the show and climb on the horse and hope for the best. But I think I've got the advantage. A lot of people who are against whom I'm competing, that's what they do. Like, that's their life. So I think in a way I've got the advantage of being competitive, but really not caring that much. And I think it helps me be competitive, that I'm not all tense and stressed out about it. I just get on the horse, go out, jump.
You're the pure amateur as opposed to the professional sort of thing.
So sometimes I think it helps if you're not so tied up in what you're doing and you can relax and do it. And it makes you do better if you don't care as much about the result.
But you've had some pretty horrific falls too, haven't you? It's not all just get on a horse and win. That hasn't put you off. You're still, as far as you're concerned, you're still
my
going.
kids, as you know, I had a really bad one late June. Broke my neck and my jaw and had a pretty bad concussion and so forth. But now my kids are starting to say, you know, Mom, how much longer do we have to be worried about the next phone call from the hospital?
Yes.
So.
And that means presumably that in your job, that means you're out of your job for a few weeks. So they mustn't have been too thrilled.
No, I didn't miss any work, although I worked for a couple of months with my teeth all wired up and I couldn't talk.
Might have been an advantage.
Yeah, my husband wasn't at all disappointed. Peace and quiet for a couple of months. But I don't like missing work. And I also don't like putting stress on my kids. So I've got to think about things from a different perspective other than just the fun I have being on a horse and competing.
Amazing. A few questions for people just who's been listening to this and wondering if they could ever get anywhere near the sheer energy that you've put in your life. And you discovered law, and that obviously worked for you. Anything else you think, if you couldn't do law, would you have done something else other than obviously not the chalets, but any other job you think you'd have liked to have done?
Cocktail waitress?
Well, waitress, that would be a good one, wouldn't it? I think it's very important from that one. What I like about that story is that it's an important job. There's no such thing as this is not an important job. It's an important job, and you do it well. And if you do it well, you get satisfaction. It doesn't matter what it is. And I can see that's obviously what happened with you. But I can't see you being a waitress the rest of your life, though.
One thing for sure is I would never see myself as a business person. I just know that that's not something that I like to do, and I don't do it well. See, that's what I think it boils down to. And that is, if you can figure out what it is, I say to my kids, that turns your crank. What is it that you like? It could be gardening. It could be cooking, or it could be computer programming. It could be working with older people in homes, working with the elderly.
The Navy?
Driving ships, not boats.
Not boats, exactly.
But the first, I think the hardest task is, and it should be easy, but sometimes it's hard to say, what is it that really inspires me? And I was lucky that I finally figured out, because I could trace back and say, when with all of these paths, like when was I actually inspired? And curious as it sounds, I was inspired as a waitress. I was inspired by, I got a big kick out of going to the different tables and checking them out and then turning myself into the person that made them feel good about their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And people, my people skills became clear. Also, going back to my father, where we started, he was great about treating absolutely everybody the same. You weren't treated better because you were president of a company, or worse because you collected the garbage. He treated everyone with respect. And so equality and fairness and that kind of thing, although it wasn't something we talked about,
The influence was there.
Yeah. I watched my dad interact with people. And that's why I think fairness and seeing people treated fairly became part of what I'm made of. So once again, you put it all together and you go a direction. It takes you into a particular direction. I was glad that I could see mine. For young people these days, a lot of times people ask me, kids in high school ask me, what do you think I should take at university? I always give them the same answer. Take something you're interested in. Take something that you think is going to be fun. And don't worry about where it leads you. But there's two reasons why undergraduate particularly should take something that you're happy to take. One is you'll do better.
Exactly, yeah.
And the other is, by doing that, you may just stumble on something, you may find something within that field that will lead to a career. But don't worry about if you eventually think you want to be a lawyer. Don't worry about taking political science or philosophy.
Which you might not enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to get good marks necessarily by taking something because you think you have to. So I think the really hard part, and the other thing I think is, not all young people should think they have to go to university. As you said, cocktail waitressing is a really important job. And so you may decide to be a mechanic, or you may decide to work in a nursing home, for example. There are all kinds of great jobs out there that don't involve going to university. Figure out what it is that you're really interested in and try to make a career out of it.
And of course, it's so easy to look back and do that. What you need to be told. Just a couple of important things like that when you're young, which might set you off in the right path. Mm-hmm. The other thing is do you need to think about a career or just something that might interest you for the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I don't think you have to think about a career when you're 18 years old, getting out of grade 12. I think you just have to think about what you want to do for a few years as you continue to mature. Some people don't figure out a career until much later than that. That's fine. I always say to my kids, you're a long time old. You're a long time with mortgages and insurance payments and this and that. So while you're young, enjoy it. Like, not that you don't enjoy every age, but while you're young, do the things that are open to you before you've got commitments and tied down. Just do it. You don't have to figure things out. There's no rush.
And don't waste the youth working towards this goal of eventually I'll be able to retire and have lots of money. You'll be too old then.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are going to discover that, the ones who think they can sacrifice 20 years of their young life to have this mythical, great afterlife. A, they may never get there, and B, they won't be so young. So, yeah. Music, has music played a part in your life at all? Do you enjoy any type of music?
60s and 70s.
So how are you on rap?
Not so much. But no, my mom's, that big family, everybody played a musical instrument because my grandfather was a band leader.
Good Lord.
And the music teacher. And he had 3 or 4 jobs. He'd need them for all those kids. But so everybody in my mom's side's musical. I think it skipped a generation. Because
no musical at all. But you like Cliff Richard and
yeah,
Elvis
I like
Presley
classical
and,
music.
yeah.
I like jazz. But I really like my 60s and 70s tunes.
So do you find yourself saying to the children, God, it all sounds the same, and you think that's exactly what my father said about the Beatles?
I'm very careful about what I say to my kids. As I say, when asked, I'll answer, but I don't offer my views about music. I just, I have a wonderful, rich, varied life. And I like to think that my kids are well on their way to developing whatever life they want, lives they want. And I don't want them ever to be worried about, I wonder what mom's doing. I should give her a call. So when we get together, it's on a very comfortable basis. It's not sort of, I'm the mother and I have to tell them what I think about stuff. They're figuring it out.
Do you think, because certainly I believe in one's life, you don't have to be told, you just have this respect for someone who is your older or your senior or even your parents or whatever. It's there somehow in you. And most people want to impress their parents. If one was to ask, who was it you were doing it for? I wanted my father to be proud of me, I wanted my mother to. Do you think that's just normal in most people?
Yes.
And your children probably, you don't have to tell them that. They're all trying to impress you.
I don't know. I maybe a little bit, but I think they are confident enough in themselves that they're out there to do their own thing for themselves. They know how much I respect them. And there's nothing they have to prove to me. So they've got their own tack.
But they're allowed to do their own thing. They're not given instructions by you.
No. If asked for advice, I give it. That's it. The only advice I ever sort of thrust down a throat was our daughter, and I persuaded her to take a year off between college and law school. And I said, here's what I think you should do. And she said, you've never said that before. Without my asking. I said, I know, but this is important.
And she listened.
And I said, take a year off. Let the wind blow. Travel. Explore. Do whatever you want to do, but take a year off and then go back to school. You're a long time old.
And she did, and it worked?
Yeah.
Gloria, thank you very much indeed for being on the show. It's been fascinating. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to what we've said? I mean, you've given us lots.
I just think the most important thing, as I said before, was if you're in tune enough with yourself to figure out what you care about. That's not always easy, but it's so very important. And a path, a plan, there's a better chance of a good plan emerging once you start at that starting point. What do I care about? And it may be flowers. And it may be people, and it may be adding and subtracting numbers. It doesn't matter. But I think that's got to be the starting point. And that requires introspection. It requires you thinking about what you're about, which is the hard part. But if you figure that out and you start there, I think things can turn out. Now, some of us have interference and have difficulties that they have to overcome, but for me it's worked anyway. I was very lucky.
There. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, John.
And thank you very much for watching. As you know, this program is brought to you by Black Owl Group, who pride themselves on helping people to be interesting speakers. And we certainly had one today. Thank you very much.